Anyway, because Jenna Ellis is the director of the Dobson Policy Center, a contributor to the Washington Examiner, to us, the Daily Wire, the Federalist. She has a book, The Legal Basis for a Moral Constitution, which I read and which I found fascinating. Jenna, it's always good to see you.
Great to see you too, Drew. Thanks for having me.
So we're looking at this. First of all, what are you expecting to hear in the State of the Union today?
Well, the White House has released some insightful points, and so we know that the theme tonight will be choosing greatness, and so President Trump will be inspiring, I think, and focusing on what America is doing positively and what he's accomplished over the last 2 years. And the emphasis, of course, will be on border security and coming together as not Democrats versus Republicans, but I think the three key words that he said from the Rose Garden were country over party, and that's really going to be the emphasis here, is we need to come together and actually understand, like you were saying, Drew, about the philosophy of what's behind this and conserving our country, conserving our rule of law, conserving the fact that we are a nation that has borders, that is sovereign. So I expect that a lot will be driven home about border security, but I really also hope that he's going to address the abortion issue, because this has been so prolific throughout the past couple of weeks with just the absolute extremist positions from the Democrats who are openly supporting infanticide. And to see that they are shamelessly doing that at this point must be called out. And I hope that he will do that forcefully, dramatically, and pointedly.
You know, I want to get back to that. I'm going to come back to the abortion issue because I think you're certainly right about the extremism on the left. One of the funny things about Trump is when you lay aside all the obstreperousness and the loud mouthing and the insults and all the funny jokes and all that stuff, when you lay that aside, he's a non-ideological figure, which is really strange. I mean, and Americans are kind of non-ideological people, which is sometimes frustrating to conservatives like me, as I know it's frustrating to leftists as well. They're people who want to solve problems. They want things to work and they want to go forward with their lives, and they want government to get debris out of the way. And Donald Trump, weirdly, after the leftism of Barack Obama and the rightism of some of the other Republican candidates, Donald Trump really is not a guy who's so easy to pin down ideologically. And so when he calls for people to come together, he's got this weird problem. On the one hand, he takes a lot of positions that I think a lot of people would agree with. On the other hand, he himself is a divisive figure. Do you see any chance that he can start to mend this country, which really is at daggers drawn at this point?
Well, I think that it goes well beyond Donald Trump. And one of the reasons that Americans are just problem solvers rather than having an underlying philosophy is because we as conservatives really need to do our part to genuinely teach the philosophy of government and what we're built upon, and that it's not just a matter of convenience. Government is not here just to simply arbitrate contract disputes between two consenting individuals. It's not here as a fundamentally evil mechanism that is just, it's a necessary evil, as some would say, but it's also not here to run our lives or make decisions on our behalf. We can pursue happiness within the context of government. And so what's been lost largely is a general understanding of civics. And I don't think that President Trump alone will accomplish that sort of perspective and reinvigorating the American will and our values-based premises. Because this is what it comes down to. I mean, I've talked to a lot of my friends who are Democrats, but they're Christians, and they have the same values that I do. They just simply approach the problem solving differently, and I think there's a disconnect there between their Christian values and how they see the mechanism of government. And so if we can come back and we can say, what's the worldview premise of government? Why are we a nation? Why do we understand the legitimate role of government is to preserve and protect our innate pre-political fundamental values that are given by our creators, our Declaration recognizes. So we have to go back before we can even solve any of the problems. We have to step back and say, what do we understand human beings to be here for that purpose, and what's the legitimate role of government? So Trump is going to solve that, but I think we need to have that conversation.
That's really interesting. He is better on these scripted speeches, I think, than he is talking off the cuff. He always has he's delivered some great speeches, actually. His first State of the Union was a great speech. His Polish speech was a great speech. Is there at this point, just your personal opinion, I'm interested, this thing with Trump and Nancy Pelosi, they're both big figures. Pelosi is a smart, vicious political character. She knows what she's doing. Trump, I believe, is a really good politician. Is there some level where we're just not going to be able to get past the Gorgo versus Godzilla fun of two people going at each other? I mean, is there some point where the personal fight between these two is going to override the actual issue?
I would hope so. And you know what this reminds me of? If you've ever read Dr. Seuss, there is, and my family, we love Dr. Seuss. And there's the story of the Zacks, where there was the north going Zacks and the south going Zacks, and they like butted up against each other, and neither one would step to the left or right to just let both of them keep on going, right? And the moral of the story is, but the world around them grew. Life went on. And so the whole idea is you have to find that compromise and not just be so stuck in your one direction that you're not willing to compromise to move on to accomplish your goals. And I think that what President Trump has actually been so successful at doing is to push this problem solving back in the hands of Congress and say, listen, I could issue a national emergency. I could, and he in fact is sending more troops to the border. I could do X, Y, and Z. But really, if the government is functioning properly according to the constitutionally vested powers, this is something that Congress should do. And you know what? They have veto override power. They are not beholden to Trump. If McConnell and Pelosi would sit down and actually have a good faith conversation and people would forget about Democrats versus Republicans for a while, they could come up with a solution that would have a 2/3 veto override that they could solve this problem. But they're the north going Zacks and the south going Zacks, and they're not going to budge left or right.
All wisdom is in Dr. Seuss. He was one of the great writers of his day. Let's get back to abortion. This has been appalling these last few days, the idea that a Democrat would actually vote against a bill to save the life of a baby who had actually escaped an abortion, who had actually, it's like, don't let him get away. It's like, you got to kill him after he's actually out in the open. The idea that a governor of a state would say it was all right to leave a baby to die. The Democrats do seem to be trying to move the Overton window, and the fact that nobody is addressing it. Nobody on CNN, if you bring it up, they actually silence you. On the other hand, there was this huge march for life. It seemed like somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 people were out there marching. Who do you think is winning this argument? Is the left winning simply by moving the window on what is acceptable to talk about? Or is this really a pro-life generation?
I think it really genuinely is a pro-life generation, and we're seeing that not only is the Supreme Court now a majority of originalists that, regardless of their personal ideology, have to affirm the fact that there is no right to abortion or even any sort of healthcare, if you want to frame it in that view, or right to privacy within the federal purview in the Constitution. And so I think that genuinely conservatives and pro-lifers are winning this, not only because of the Supreme Court, but because we are having this debate so openly now. This is something where not only, the March for Life is great, that's been happening since the first anniversary of Roe versus Wade, but we're seeing the Democrats have to push these extremist, just brutal bills, and their true agenda is showing through. And I think that is mobilizing some of my generation, the millennials, who are seeing really for the first time how brutal and evil this is, because we know that babies, even after heartbeat, we can see the science, we can see that these are tiny humans that deserve protection. And so for the extremist bills that are being pushed through, because they know that Roe versus Wade and its progeny is about to be overturned in the very near future, they are scrambling, and they don't even care that they are now being so transparent in their agenda. So I think that over the next year or two, conservatives and pro-lifers can be strongly encouraged. We're having this conversation, maybe not yet on CNN, but we're having it on social media where all the millennials are. We're having it in the legislatures, and we're having this on a national level. And I hope we'll have it on a national scale tonight with State of the Union.
So if Roe v. Wade were overturned, and we've talked about this before, but still, you would still have states like New York who were basically, you should be able to kill your kid till he's 5 or whatever they're now saying. Is that what you foresee for the future? I mean, do you foresee a country in which some states are pagan, baby sacrificing states, and some are still have some grasp of what morality means?
Well, it is a state issue, to be sure, but that doesn't mean that states then can legislate however they want according to any sort of code of morality they want. They are still under Article 4. They are states in the United States of America, and so they are still obligated to preserve and protect life, as our Declaration acknowledges as well. So this isn't something that from state by state is still a legitimate role of the legislature. We just need to have better conversations. We need to have legal challenges to this. And you're right. I mean, this is basically ancient Rome with its pagan sacrifices to children. And it's absurd that in 2019, with all of the technology, we are still back in ancient Rome with these types of child sacrifices that we're not preserving and protecting life. So for everyone in their 50 states, we have to get out and do something in our state legislatures, challenge these issues, and make sure to protect life.
It's wonderful that they call it progressivism. Jenna Ellis is the director of the Dobson Policy Center. It's always great to see you, Jenna. Thanks a lot.
You too, Drew. Thanks.